the newest like JavaScript framework that's been released last week, and then in like 2 months it completely changes or gets like abandoned, and then your product is like already sort of like going in the bin because you have to recreate the whole thing. And also, like, if you do indeed go forward with like an idea, like a product idea, and you've developed it on something that's like you can't find developers for, or something that is not supported very well, or doesn't have a lot of open source code, you're gonna run into a lot of like cost issues, because finding like people who know rare technologies is more expensive than for example, like Next.js or React developers, and then you also have to build a lot of the stuff yourself instead of like taking open source code and using that.
Perfect. Which brings us to another question. Is it possible to change the technology during the development, or is it sustainable to do it? If we figure out it wasn't a good choice because for certain reasons it just doesn't fit our app?
Well, yeah, if you have to, then you have no choice, but you should always weigh the benefits and the downsides of doing that, because it's going to cost you a way or another, because you're going to have to put like a lot of hours into developing the new app, finding developers, and then obviously replacing the whole old app. And if that's in production already, it's going to be a bit of an operation. But if you are going to do it, you want to do it as fast as possible, because that way you reduce the amount of like hours you waste on the old app. But it's possible, but it's going to cost you.
Yeah, but not do it. All right. Now we choose the technology, and moving on to another very talked topic. What is better, creating a prototype and validating it first, or bringing a perfect solution first and finding the users later? Let me explain. I personally know some startups that they just realized that they have a really good idea. They started to work on it as fast as possible so they could release, and then started to change as they needed. But then of course it's not always good like that. So what do you think? Is it really important to first validate the idea, or if I have the motivation right now, I should just get into it and work?
Yeah, it sort of depends on your idea. I think there's a couple of ways you can go about it. I think generally it's good that you validate your idea as much as possible before making anything, because if you code something and you have to change it, it's going to take more time than changing a design in Figma, for example. And you can get quite a lot of feedback just based on like a design of the idea, or of how it's supposed to look and what it's supposed to do. You want to obviously find I'd say it's a good thing if you find like users to your application before you build it, so you don't do things like the classical Finnish engineer who builds the whole thing first, and then when they're ready they wonder why no one wants the product, because there's no market for it, or they haven't done any like client acquisition work. Like if you can get like a wait list of people to your product before it's even out, that would be really good. Just have the description on a website, put it out on LinkedIn, build it in like public, and see what people say. Bring it out in front of as many people as possible. If a lot of people say it's good, then you know you're on the right track. But if people say they might not use it, or they might not be willing to pay for it, then you'll know that you might want to change something. And yeah, I think that's my answer to the question.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on to as a programmer with some design skills, should I rely on my knowledge or find an expert? Because some of the programmers, for example, working or studying front end, they work with design quite often. Me personally as well, I could do it, maybe even good, but I'm not totally sure. Should I rely on me or validate it with the user without designer, or just go for the real designer?
Yeah, it's actually, I think there's a couple of different types of design like you can do. Like as a programmer, obviously you want to know some design skills. You don't want to be without those, because they're important to make quality stuff. So like the layouts, easily readable and accessible layouts are really important. You want to make sure that you know the basics of that. But when it comes to like graphics design and like making good looking interfaces, choosing colors, fonts and whatnot, I think if you don't feel comfortable or competent enough with design, you should always opt in for like a ready-made open source design system or a component library, there's nothing like shameful about using them, because a lot of people have put a lot of time and effort into making those look really good and making them like really accessible, so they have all the keyboard shortcuts and everything. And it will also make your development, it will also reduce your development time by quite a lot, because you don't have to go in and make every button component and round all the corners and put in all the borders and everything like that. So everything comes pretty much out of the box, and most often than not you can't really mess it up and make it look bad, at least. So learn the basics of like HTML and making layouts, but if you don't feel comfortable, use a design system, and if you can afford it, you can find an expert or get one on board your team.
Amazing. Moving on to the creating a team. As I mentioned before, like for certain parts, I'm gonna need a team, of course. So, what do you think is the most important part creating a team?
The team is probably the most important thing you'll have, because they're the people who make things happen. And you want to be very, very careful when selecting your teammates who you give equity to. And that's another thing. You want to keep your team as motivated as possible. You want to have people, the core founding team, if we're talking about that, not like a development team. You want to have them as motivated as possible. You want to have everybody, equal equity, or a good amount of equity, so they're motivated to do work. Because your worst fear is that somebody leaves midway there, and then you have like 10-20% of your company is like in the bin because they have the percentages and you can't get them off them, or something like that. And also keep a balanced team, because if you have like 4 business people trying to make a tech product, it's like it could be a bit difficult. It might be a bit easier if you put a programmer or 2 in there in the mix. So yeah, those are a couple of things I think that are really important.
Another question: can it survive if somebody is working remotely?
Yeah, I think so. At least in our company, we have people who work remotely. Like, I think it works especially well with programmers, because obviously it's something that most often you do alone, and then you communicate through like a Slack channel or whatever, messages. But I think for like the sales team, the founding team, it's really important to sometimes get together, because at least in my experience, what I found is that like when we're in the office together or some space together, it just makes working somehow like easier. It's easier to like communicate your ideas and make stuff happen, and it also makes the company feel as if it actually exists. Because if everything's in the digital world, it's sort of like it's out there, but when you're together, it feels like it's a community, and there's actual people here who work on this thing together. So it's very nice to work together, but definitely it is like okay to work remotely as well. It, depends on the person.
Happy to hear that. That was always my biggest question. So, speaking of the team, what do you think is the max number of people in a team? And now I mean like exactly the core team, because I remember hearing from one of the founders of Volt that they were actually 6 founders, and they said it was too much. So, what do you think of it? How many people did you have?
Actually, originally we had 6 people as well, and I think that 5 to 6 is starting to be the max. Like, I think the Volt people are very correct on that, at least. That like it's like, because the more people you have, the less equity you can split between the team members, and the less you can sell to investors if you're looking to get an investment. So like if you have 6 people, 6 divided by 100, that's not that much. Then give 10-20% to investors over time. So it's like you don't get left with that much. And also, like at the start, unless you have like half of your developers and like everybody has like a specific job they can do, I don't know, like you have to be able to at least justify why everyone's there, so there's no people just like hanging around. Obviously you want to have your friends there, but it's like they need to be of use and like value to the company at the end of the day. So if you can justify 6 people, sure, but like again, it's just that it will be better the less people you have on board, because of the equity that gets given out.
How many people are you now?
We're currently 3 people.
Okay. Moving on. Okay, we have a team. We know approximately how to design our product. We can start, but we are facing the cruel reality that, of course, I'm a programmer. I can do a lot, but every programmer is better at something else. I can learn new technology, or I can use the technology that I know, but I'm not an expert on that because I'm a student, for example. Should I try my best to learn it and make it on my own, or should I find an expert? What do you think about this?
I think at the start you want to do as much as yourself as you can, because it's gonna like, you know, save you time and money. Well, not money mostly, because it's like if you hire an expert, it's gonna cost you. So like you want to get people on your team that are like, you know, knowledgeable in programming. Like programmers, there's a, you know, computer science building right there, so you might want to pay a visit if you don't have any programmer friends. The quality of code, I don't think is sounds a bit funny, but if you're a startup, like the quality of the code may not be that much of a concern. It's more that can you put something out there for people to test and try. So that, I think that's more important. You want to put something out there, because if it works, you know that there's something you can pursue and hopefully have success in. And if you know, you keep thinking like, okay, maybe I'm not good enough, then it's like, well, you never put stuff out there.
Okay. Moving on to the how to set a correct line. I should not pass well DIY and outsource the task instead. Meaning, of course, the opposite way. When people are founding their own startup or own company, they want to do everything on their own, because either they don't trust the other people, that they're not gonna do it the way they like it, or they have problems to find the correct people, or different reasons. Where do you think is like the really important to set the line and realize, okay, I'm not an expert on this again. I really need an advice or a consultancy or somebody else to actually help me with that.
Yeah, it's. I think that's a difficult line to like set in stone. It sort of depends on all the cases. I think you can get a lot of help for free. Also, there's like place like Startup Sauna, where you have like a lot of different founders from different backgrounds who can offer help. But if you do need like, you know, let's say like sales outsourcing, development outsourcing, something that, you know, concretely has to be done and, you know, probably paid for, I think you should first explore all the options of, can I do this myself with like maybe low code tools or some other way, before you like go for the paid option. And then when you do, you want to be, you know, very specific on what you want to actually get. And yeah, it's try to do it yourself for free first, or, you know, with your in-house team. But if you just can't do it another way, or if there's like a too large of an opportunity cost, like if you calculate that, you know, my team is working on some features, but we also need this, and we can't wait, then it might be like a thing you just have to do if you have the funding for it.
Alright, that makes sense. Super cool. So, right now we have a team, we kind of know what everybody is going to be doing, but how to set the right development approach. Meaning, everyone now talks about agile iterations, but there are still like companies and startups using waterfall. It's just, what do you think about that? Tell me.
Yeah, so as a startup, like beginning stage startup, it's I think all this like bureaucracy and like the systems are a bit irrelevant to you, because they just add like time that somebody needs to manage something, which is like time taken out of coding. So like, you know, if you have a team of 3 people, 2 of you are developers, one's the business guy, and like you spend time on thinking about like sprints, it's like it doesn't take a while, but it's like it doesn't really matter. You don't have to adhere to that like that much, because it's like at the end of the day, like I said before, you just want to put stuff out there for people to see, and that's what matters. Obviously, if you're like outsourcing development, where you have like a lot of people, then these type of systems become sort of a necessity, because the amount of communication you have to do and organizing you have to do grows like exponentially with more people. And especially if you outsource, then like to get more specific, like if you outsource like a certain feature set that's well specified, you should do like a waterfall as someone who orders the code. But if you don't know what you're doing and it could change, and then like agile sprints specify those small bits of like work. But yeah, at the start, it's sort of like, you know, if it's 2 of you coding, you probably know the code base inside out. Everybody knows what they're doing, so it's like, you know, it sort of doesn't matter. But yeah.
And what do you think about the validation and in the iteration way, also during the design phase?
Definitely, it's going to save you a lot of time because it's easier to change in Figma than in the actual code, and then like you save a lot of headaches if it's a different person designing and iterating and validating with like possible clients than a coder, because then the code has to go back and forth, and then they get really annoyed because they think you don't know what you want, which is most often the case, but you want to avoid that. So the design part is like a cheap way to iterate on the products, and nowadays with Figma you can make really good prototypes where you can press the buttons and stuff like that, so you can test out what works and what doesn't before you actually code it. And that's usually how we do it at my company when we develop. We try to do the Figma first, and then make sure it's like all set, everything's done, everything's approved, and then we develop it. And we minimize those like back and forths in the development phase.
Amazing, thanks God for Figma nowadays. Okay, so I coded the perfect application. What do I do next?
Well, you want to get it out there if it's not already out there. Like find people who use it, test it, buy it, sell it. Just get it out there in the world. And that's one of the important things, because there's a lot of cool projects programmers make, but they get left in the garage or the drawer because they don't put it out there in the world. And, yeah.
What do you think is really important while putting it up there? Like, what would you suggest for a person to do if they have already a product? So where to start? What is the crucial part nowadays?
Good question. Depends on the product, but I think if you have like a standalone, if it's a perfect application, it's ready, everything's there. Put it on like Product Hunt, post about it on LinkedIn, send it to your friend, show it around at school, wherever you are at work, and just try to get people to use it. And if it's something you want to sell, then try to get people to sell it and people to buy it as well.
Awesome. And should I consider the potential size of the application already while building it or deploying it? Meaning, at the beginning, of course, you're not going to have probably many users, but with time it might get much more numbers, and quite often, at least in the past few years, happened that then the web page may fall or something like that. So, do you do something while the development for this to avoid any problems already, even though you don't know actually how many users you will be having?
Yeah, I think at least the way we do it, I think we have a pretty modern approach to developing like web apps and websites and mobile apps. So we basically put everything in the cloud. We use like Next.js and Firebase. So the scaling issue is handled by Google or Amazon or where we deploy your app. So you don't really have to think about it that much because you put it in the cloud. It's handled for you, and it's also pretty cost efficient to start. Like you get away with like the free tier pretty much in all of your hobby projects. Like if you go over the free tier on Firebase, I think you're doing something right. So like it's obviously yes, you should consider it, because then if it blows up and it doesn't scale, it's very unfortunate for you and you have to do a lot of work. But I think with like the modern technologies, especially like cloud technologies, it's really hard to like make an app not scale.
And is there any tool or any magic what to do and to ensure that any outages are going to be quickly resolved? Meaning, if there is any problem, I'm going to know immediately. Do you use something like that?
From my experience, usually the outages happen when you push something new into production and you forgot to test something, or something obscure and strange happened. So if you put something new, like a new update out on your software, be vigilant about the first few hours once it's out, because there might be something that you overlooked during the testing phase. Because software doesn't just break on its own usually, but usually if you update something and then there's something you overlook, then there might be issues. But just keep an eye on it. You're most likely working on it like all the time, hopefully, if you're doing a startup. So you should be able to know if something goes wrong.
Perfect. Now, after how long time would you suggest to the developers to have a look at it again and maybe create an improved version? I mean, if you put your application out there, people are gonna be actually using it. After some time, they will tell you what is good, what is not good, but you cannot believe everyone because, of course, they are also not experts. And quite often happens that people actually don't know exactly what they want. So what would you suggest, like, with improvements? Do it immediately or wait some time? Do you do any improvements in your projects actually if you work for the customer?
Yeah, we do all the time. Because usually people, or how I think I would do it as well, is like when you make your first like MVP, this like, or maybe not even MVP, like when you test out your idea, like you should make it in like Excel sheet. You know, you don't need to have any custom software. Make it with like the free things that you can find online and like low code, no code tools. You don't need anything special, you know, fancy systems to test an idea out, usually. So if you get enough traction and it gets out of hand and you spend a lot of time managing something that the computer can do for you, then you might be on the right track to create some like improved MVP version of your product or like the actual product itself.
Now the big question of nowadays. What do you think is more important while having an idea? Starting with web application or mobile application?
Well, that depends entirely on your product. So like if you're making a mobile app, then it's pretty obvious. Sometimes you could make both for your product. You just really have to see what the best ways to interact with the product. If it's more of a mobile thing or if it's more of a desktop thing, really depends on what you make. You know, if you have like a programming SaaS product, then obviously probably website, web app. But if you have like a game or something like this, social media, then mobile app.
And what do you think about choosing an application that that is able to do the code for both, like Flutter or React Native? Do you use those as well?
Yeah, definitely. Those are like I think the go-to nowadays because obviously. So for those of you who don't know, like Flutter and React Native are these like frameworks and libraries that allow you to make one code base and then export it to both iOS and Android. So basically you don't have to make an iOS app and an Android app separately. This saves you time because you don't have to make two. You can only make one app instead of two. And they have really good support because they're maintained by Facebook and Google, so they have like all the open source stuff available. So I think if you don't make it your app now with one of those, it's like you probably have some really specific use case, or you might be yeah. So
can imagine. All right, it all sounds like awesome, but then is also the question always: I have an idea, but I'm not sure about it yet. I'm not sure if it's the one that I want to spend so much time on. Should I try and maybe I will figure out that it's good or it's not good, or should I just wait for another idea that I will feel like confident from the beginning? Did you have also the feeling like at the beginning, like yes, this is amazing, I want to do it, but at the same time like, well, I'm not sure actually. Should I?
Yeah, don't wait, just do it. You know, go for it, because if you wait, it's like it's like I wouldn't think that something would. If I was like hoping for a gold bar to appear on the table here, if I just closed my eyes and really thought about it for a long time, I don't think I could think about it for quite a while without it happening. So like, just do. If you have even the smallest, stupidest idea, I think you should go do it, because you never know where it's going to lead. Like we had a really stupid idea of like an AR game in high school, and it turned out pretty well, I think, at least in my own opinion. And we just went and did it, and then we had a really stupid idea for a social media app, which is like the most competed market, like in apps, maybe besides video games. So like, just go do anything. The worst thing that can happen to you is that you win, especially if you're like a student and young, and you're not like responsible to like children or anything like that. So yeah.
All right, thank you so much, Veeti. It's been very big fun with you. And now we're moving on to the Q&A time. Is here anyone who would have any questions for Veeti? Amazing. Our amazing Patu will give you microphones.
Yeah, thanks for answering all these questions. That was very useful. You mentioned that you had a couple of ideas that didn't work out that well, especially the first ones that you mentioned. What did that mean in practice? Like, what does like failing some ideas mean?
Yeah, like in our case, it was that basically the apps we made, it was really difficult to make them generate any revenue. So like we couldn't like, we made some Excel sheets where we did like, okay, if we got like 1,000 users, which is like not self-evident, that's something, it's just like getting 100 clients or 100 users or 100, you know, downloads or 1,000 or however many zeros you want to add. It's like not self-evident because those are like real people using your app, and then you need to convert those people to generating you money through like, for example, in our case it was like microtransaction and advertisement, but advertisements don't really pay that much, so we would have to have like millions of users to generate like revenue. So you can think about it, like we thought about this, we're like, okay, if we have like 10,000 users, which for an app in Finland is quite a lot, could it pay even one of our developers a salary in a year? And we basically said maybe, but you know, it was like really difficult to get the numbers to add up at the end of the day. So like, you know, you can, you know, because at the end of the day you want your product to be the thing that makes you the living, so you have to make sure that every salary is paid and all the expenses are paid as well, because those are going to be growing constantly. So we just looked at the numbers and we're like, okay, we can have 1 million users, but it's gonna be like tight, and yeah. So yeah, just basically it turned out it was really hard to make money with those apps.
Okay, can I follow up?
Yeah, you can. Please, yeah.
I was more concerned, let's say, on the consequences, on the practical consequences of failing. Like, what does that like imply? Like, is it just like economical loss, or also something else?
Yeah, economical loss. We had some like AWS credits that we got from Kiosk Accelerator, which was really nice because we got to test everything out like zero cost. But you know, we had like, I can't remember, it was somewhere around 1,000 users on the app, but like we started racking up costs even with a little amount of like people uploading media to it and like, you know, videos and whatever. So it would have just been like generating loss, and we would have to like raise the money, and then it would be the same story as like, you know, Snapchat, for example, who like, I think only recent years like turned a profit for the first time, and like, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars were pumped into those companies. So it's like really difficult market at least. Yeah.